Hello friends, welcome to the Eastern Front channel. Today we will talk about the memoirs of Friedrich Paulus' adjutant, Wilhelm Adam. He fought with Paulus until he was captured in 1943 in Stalingrad. In his memoirs, he tells in detail the story of the Wehrmacht disaster near the city on the Volga River. Links to other parts of his memories can be found in the description below the video. At the end of December, Colonel Sell came to the cauldron. We shook hands with mixed feelings and I escorted him to the commander-in-chief's dugout. After he had given his report, we asked him to tell us how things looked from outside. Worse than we had feared, General. Before taking off, I was able to take a look at the situation map through my friend Colonel Buss on the staff of the Army Group. Tazinskaya was lost on the 24th December with a big supply depot. The airfield was taken by the Red tanks in a surprise attack. Almost all the aircraft were captured by the Russians. That will have serious effects on the air supply for the cauldron. Morozovsk is also threatened. The battle is raging west of the Romanian Third Army. Milrovo was already occupied by the enemy, but is back in our hands. Battle groups, here in their whole battalions, were quickly brought forward to stop the enemy. The 6th Panzer Division was taken from Hof on Manstein's orders. This and the threatened encirclement forced Hof to retreat. Army Group A is still in the Caucasus. On the other hand, the headquarters of Army Group Don has moved from Novocherkassk to Taganrog. In other words, we must finally bury our hopes of relief. Only one thing remains for us, to fight on and hamper as many of the enemy forces as possible, at least to tie up some of the enemy's forces, and enable Manstein to establish a new front. Schmidt too had Sell report to him. Much less impressed than Paulus, he acknowledged Sell's account somewhat cheekily. "The flag will not be lowered, old chap." The Army Commander-in-Chief and his Chief of Staff took course for the defeat of the 6th Army. How much longer could our worn-out, lost mob hold out against the enemy's strong forces? What justified encouraging more than 200,000 soldiers to engage in such a questionable aim? Army Group Don telegraphed that our future signals chief would be Colonel Van Hooven. His predecessor, Colonel Arnold, after being wounded 7 times, was no longer fit for frontline duty. On the 28th December 1942, I stood for the first time in my life opposite my new comrade. He was tall and thin, had a clever, small face, and showed himself extremely well orientated both inside and outside the cauldron. "Tell me, Hooven, how is it that you are so extremely well informed?" I asked him. "I was commander of the Supreme Command's Signals Regiment. Naturally, I had a complete view of events on all fronts in this position. On the 24th December, General Feldjebel personally briefed me at Führer headquarters on my new task. On the 26th December, I landed at Army Group Don in Novocherkassk. There I learned everything that I did not know until then." In the following conversations with Generals Paulus and Schmidt, Hooven confirmed what Sell had already told us. Hooven drew the situation more realistically, using his knowledge of the reports and orders that had passed through his hands at Führer headquarters. It appeared that the Army High Command still believed in the success of Hof's action on the 24th December. Then General Feldjebel had asked Hooven to pass his greetings on to Paulus and let him say that he was hoping to greet him personally soon. Hooven too had believed in the imminent relief of the 6th Army. His stop at Army Group Don quickly dispelled this illusion. Speaking to Paulus, he gave his opinion that an immediate breakout was the only chance of saving at least part of the 6th Army, as there were no more forces available for its rescue. As I appeared for the conference that afternoon, Paulus confirmed to me once more his standpoint expressed to Army Group Don on the 26th September. Hooven's proposal to break out of the encirclement is not achievable. I do accept that he is well in the picture on many things, but the latest intentions of the Army High Command and Army Group Don are not open to him either. Schmidt was emphatically angry with Hooven and accused him of making a pessimistic assessment of the situation, saying that the will to hold on was paralyzed. In fact, there was much discussion among the staff about the description by the Army's Chief of Communications. 2 groups began to form at about this time. While some of the officers believed that there was no longer any chance of saving the surrounded army, the others did not give up their belief in being liberated. "If the Führer knew," said some people, "how it really looks like here, he would certainly take extensive measures, but it seems he does not get sight of our reports. Above all, the younger officers led by Elklepp argued this way. Under his influence, Paulus and Schmidt were persuaded to send an officer to personally report to Hitler. Then I received a radio message from the Army Personnel Office with the following content. General of Panzer Troops, Hoob is to be sent to Führer headquarters to receive the award of the swords to the Knight's Cross with oak leaves. That is our opportunity, said Paulus when he read the message. Hoob must give an unvarnished report on our situation. Hitler will listen to this highly decorated general. Schmidt put together immediately all necessary papers on supplies, ammunition, fuel, tanks, guns, especially about the fighting strengths and combat readiness of the troops, losses from gunfire, freezing and sickness, and also about the wounded and the difficulties of medical care. The reporting system continued to function relatively well within the war machinery of the Sixth Army. As Hoob entered the headquarters, precise information lay on the table. Paulus and Schmidt added verbal instructions and asked the general about his personal opinion of being thrown into the scales in order to present a realistic assessment of our situation to Hitler. Hoob flew off the same day by courier machine. I am anxious about whether Hoob will be able to speak or whether Hitler will interrupt him immediately after the first sentence in order to keep all the unpleasant news from himself, said Paulus. These days, many officers called in on me and sat around without a function because their units had been smashed. Some sought a new role, most asked for permission to fly out. Every day one of them could board the courier machine to Army Group Dawn. I had the task of recommending those to be sent out on medical grounds. This concerned, without exception, the older gentlemen who were deemed no longer fit for combat by the doctor. Major General Schmidt checked every case and decided by name. Only those who had witnessed the pitiless dying in the cauldron could have any idea what feelings of relief these officers experienced when they had the order to fly out in their hands. Torn away from death, said many of them as they reported to me upon leaving, but so many of them had not yet finished with the war in the years to follow until 1945. One day, the battlefield artist from Leipzig, who had appeared during the summer, came to see me. Under his arm was a packet of drawings, sketches for battle scenes. His face bore traces of the distress and suffering of the encirclement. I took the sketches to Schmidt and suggested we let the artist fly out. For us, he posed only an unnecessary burden and was not required as a combatant. Schmidt declined to make an exception. General Paulus, to whom I eventually went for a positive decision, shied away from correcting his chief of staff, so the painter became the senseless sacrifice to the beast of war, which his talent had recorded. He left my dugout completely broken. Cupper stood below the entrance. Post from the high command, Colonel, put it on the table. The senior sergeant major pointed to the letter on top. It was a long, detailed report from the 8th Corps about increasing appearances of disintegration among the troops. Since the failure of the relief offensive became known, the will to resist has fallen drastically, I read. The writer quoted reports of breaches of discipline, leaving of posts, going off to Stalingrad, refusal to obey orders, even self-mutilation. Even officers were beginning to act listlessly. We must now reckon with such tendencies. The commanders must get a sharp grip and re-establish order was how the usually strict Schmidt reacted to these signs of decline. Heitz came after with the promotion of Schmidt. I heard of his order to the 8th Corps from Arlia. I still remember that every paragraph began with the words, "was shot," and then followed the offense, who left the position without an order having been given, who failed to carry out a given order, who made contact with the enemy, and so on. Paulus was more understanding. One should not forget what these soldiers have gone through in the last weeks. If they can only eat themselves full and sleep again, they will see everything with different eyes. Of course, General, this also plays a role, I interjected, but it seems to me that there is much more to it. In talking with young officers and soldiers, I keep coming up against deep doubts about the reasons for which they are having to fight. At school, at home, the Hitler Youth, the Nazi Party, and in the Wehrmacht was implanted with a feeling of the greatness of fighting for an honorable aim. They believed in the Führer, trusted him, put their lives at stake. Now they are discovering that the promises are broken, their trust in the lies was valueless. That is especially painful and leads in many instances to positive breaches of discipline. As far as it goes with the younger men, it applies here and there, but there are also signs of resolve among the older ones. The report still indicates something else. Every night, apparently, Germans call through loudspeakers from the enemy trenches for our soldiers to give up the senseless fight. The Sixth Army has been betrayed by Hitler. They are to be sacrificed to his prestige. The speakers are German communists who emigrated to Russia. From pamphlets thrown over, we recognize the names of Ulbricht, a former member of parliament for the German Communist Party, and of the writers Weinert and Bredel, also communists. I regard this propaganda as being of no great effect. We must watch out, of course, that no radical effects arise. In the meantime, it is enough if we keep on being aware that this is enemy propaganda trying to break our resistance. Incidentally, we must keep alive the hope of being released from the cauldron. Keeping the hope alive of being released, in which the commander-in-chief himself did not believe. Was that not the same as Hitler and the Army High Command were doing? Lies versus trust? Could an army commander take this course? Had this, in view of the dying and suffering, not something to do with soldiery and obedience? These questions did not only come from me, they also came from Paulus himself. But they led to no consequences. The will to hold on took the upper hand. In this lay the combined guilt of General Paulus and all the military commanders in the Stalingrad cauldron, an historical, military, and human guilt. The Wehrmacht High Command animated Paulus in a way through its decision to hold out. At the end of December came a radio message from the Army Personnel Office. It terminated the Commander-in-Chief of the Army's Special Authority, which until then only the Army Personnel Office had held, for the promotion of officers up to Lieutenant General, and awards of the German Cross in Gold and the Knight's Cross. Hitler wanted to relieve the dying. The favored awarding of the highest German awards and promotion from the ranks should convey the desired physic to the Sixth Army. There was another aspect to this that seemed important to me at the time. Promotion to the next highest rank meant the raising of the widows' and orphans' pensions. The divisions were informed of the rising chances of promotion. In the following period, the work in my section returned once more to full speed. On the 31st December, Captain Toke flew to Army Group Dawn, whose headquarters had meanwhile moved from Novocherkassk to Taganrog, about 200 kilometers further west. On the previous day, Paulus had personally tasked Toke, in Schmidt's presence, with the task of being the Army's supply commissioner. You will report to Field Marshal von Manstein personally and tell him that you have received the task from me for purposeful loading and complete use of the cargo space of the supply aircraft. You know what is happening here. Take all the papers on food supplies, ammunition, fuel, and medical supplies with you and put them in front of the Field Marshal. Schmidt added, take care that at last all available aircraft are placed at our disposal. The Army Group must stop sending dozens of Heinkel 111s to the abandoned Tazenskaya airfield. Our soldiers are threatened with death by starvation. Report back to us when we can expect a better supply service. Manstein appointed the captain senior quartermaster for the air supply of the Sixth Army, and Tupke energetically applied himself to helping the surrounded army. However, no noticeable improvement appeared. The loading space was far too little. Soviet anti-aircraft gunfire and the winter weather decimated the amount of goods being flown in. The distance from the source airfields and the cauldron was considerably increased following the loss of Morozovsk and Tazenskaya. The airfields at Shakhty, Novocherkassk, Voroshilovgrad, and Sox lay 350 to 400 kilometers away by air. In a radio conversation at New Year, Hitler repeated that every member of the Sixth Army could enter the new year with confidence, that the Führer would not leave the heroic fighters on the Volga and the Lech, and that Germany would see to the needs of their commitment. At the same time, General of Panzer Troops Paulus was promoted to Colonel General. Loyalty to loyalty. There was then such an expression of Hitler's which, despite all the agony, was not totally without effect, even if it was also questionably worded like a similar report 6 weeks earlier. The repeated exchanges, the inhuman privation, the hollow-cheeked dying had brought something to us. But we no longer saw the things as a whole. It was very difficult to see things as a whole. so the disaster continued. Dear friends, that's all for today. Please support this video with any comment and don't forget to press like. It was Tim, and see you.